So now we have a presentation on carbon auditing, accounting, and CBAM by Mr. Harsh Choudhry, co-founder and CEO, Sentra World. Can we have a round of applause for him?
Okay, so I think we've had a very good morning. We've heard from some industry stalwarts about what's happening in the area of decarbonization. We've heard about some really good technologies. I think we're going to go in a little deeper and talk a little bit about what it takes to actually measure, with the simple logic that what you cannot measure, you cannot manage. Just a little bit about what we do. I run a company called Sentra World, where we help companies measure, mitigate, and monetize their CO2 emissions. We have a software platform by which we do this. I myself have spent the last 20 years in the area of sustainability. We work in heavy industry. We work in industrial manufacturing. That's the only thing that we do within steel, cement, a little bit of automotive and engineering and all of that. And again, we have clients in India, Middle East, Southeast Asia, and all of that. Bunch of different products. I won't make you go through it, but your end-to-end CO2 emissions management happens on this one integrated platform, ranging from calculation of your emissions to your scope 3 management, certifications, creating your decarbonization roadmap. We've recently started up with helping steel companies sell their green material as well. We'll talk a little bit about that. Bunch of different clients. You'll see a lot of players from the steel industry, as we felt relevant was for this forum. Large companies such as SAIL, JSPL, JSW, medium-sized companies such as Kirloskar, Kalyani, etc. Many other players such as you see ARS Steel, also Mr. Bhatia over here. Also the users of steel such as Volvo, Cummins, Infosys as a major real estate player. A bunch of different people, all of them that we've been helping them on the topic of decarbonization. Now let's get into, I know some of the context has already been set in the morning, but I wanted to go through a few points. We are, from a CO2 emissions perspective, why is CO2 emissions important? Greenhouse gas emissions are important because they result in climate change. A primary indicator of climate change is how much of temperature increase there will be or there has been since the 1700s, which was pre-industrialization era. The limit, as the scientists put it at, is 1.5 degrees centigrade. Any guesses from the audience around how much we are at right now? Any guesses? How many people say that we are at about 1 degree centigrade increase already? Can I see your hands? Okay, I see a couple of hands over there. Sorry? Okay, we have an answer around 3 degrees. So is there anybody around 2? We see a group of 3s, we see a group of 1s. Okay, good range. Okay, good. So between 1, yes, it is, good news is between 1 and 3. We are at about, NASA puts it at about 1.35. A few other agencies put it at about 1.5, but hopefully we shouldn't go to the 3 number. If we end up going to the 3 number, that is going to be catastrophe, right? There's going to be rising sea levels and many other things. We hopefully should not reach there. I'm a big fan of human adaptability, but this is something that we don't always have to adapt to. Now, the steel industry forms about 12% of India's CO2 emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. I see many folks from the cement industry here. This number is probably a little lesser for the cement industry, but then also very, very important. Those are the two largest industrial sectors after the power generation sector for India's decarbonization story. So very, very relevant. India's average CO2 emissions are 2.5 tons of CO2 per ton of steel compared to a global average of 1.9. We have our reasons for it. We are reliant on coal. We don't have access to so much of gas. We don't have access to so much of scrap. So these are all, there is a reason why this number is 2.5, but that should not prevent us from bringing it lower. Now, apart from, all of us are part of small, medium, and large organizations, and we know that we have an obligation to do good things while doing well. But we have to ensure that there is business use in all of this, right? We heard the beginning of a short debate right before this around green steel premium. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but a few things. Right now, we are also seeing companies, yes, everybody's going to pursue a journey in sustainability because we are good global citizens. But at the same time, we need to make this work for us, right? We need to make this work economically. We are seeing three areas, right? One is around green products. Either you can think about this as an avoided carbon tax. We have carbon taxation systems coming up everywhere. We have to not only think of green steel premium, but we also have to think about how you can avoid carbon tax, which will actually add to your margin, make your product more attractive from a financial perspective. Second, price premiums. Yes, we'll talk a little bit about that a little later in the presentation. Sustainable organizations. Now, we have companies going for IPO left, right, and center. If you talk about business leaders, primary thing on their mind is the value of their stock price, how much value they're returning to their shareholders. Sustainability plays a very, very important role in this. The brand value matters a lot. And now, over the last 4-5 years, we've been seeing this new term around sustainability linked finance, SLF, really coming out. The UPL group, which is an agri company, they raised, I think, India's first sustainability linked loan of about $700 million in 2020, I think. JSW in 2022, Tata Communications was a couple of years back. All of these were in the range of some $500 to $700 million. Why does this matter? This matters because these loans were obtained at a lower interest rate, right? The reduction in the interest rate was about 0.1 to 0.5 degrees centigrade, 0.5%, right? Hopefully not centigrade. So that was the reduction. And this is a point where it wasn't just the chief sustainability officer, but it was the CFO of the company who got into this, because they clearly saw that there is value in decarbonization. Decarbonization will work if it's not just the chief sustainability officer, but everybody, the COO, the CFO, everybody is really involved over here, right? So that's value that decarbonization can deliver on that front. And obviously, we've also seen, decarbonization or sustainability is not new to the steel industry. People have been doing it for economic benefit for decades, right? Energy efficiency, yield improvement, they have all been there. They will continue to create value. Companies should do it. It improves the bottom line. At the same time, carbon credits, we've talked about it. I always see it as in the voluntary market, it's a little bit of a wild card, but now with a regulated market coming in, we should see more action really happening over there. And to manufacturers in India today, they're faced with four forces. One is around customer requirements. More and more customers are asking for green materials, right? And there are various consortia which are getting formed. There are domestic regulations. The CCTS has come into play. There is, for the steel sector, there's green steel taxonomy. There is, various pollution control boards are driving the topic. Exports are now reliant on your CO2 emissions. EU CBAM was one of them. US is we can put that on hold for a while. We know that UK CBAM is coming up in 2027. We hear Japan, Korea, and parts of Middle East also implementing something. The UAE has just launched this year their own carbon reporting system. They will likely get into a taxation system as well. And capital markets, which we talked about, is pretty much around any company looking to invest is going to see, is this company really sustainable? Is it really going to be doing well in the future from a sustainability standpoint? So many things really working towards manufacturers looking at sustainability. Let's get into carbon accounting, right? When we think about decarbonization, we really just see it's a very simple framework: measure, mitigate, and monetize. In measurement, your first thing is, we're at a point where I think we're done with, spreadsheets and Excel files. Let's move on to more digitally enabled CO2 tracking. There are more advanced forms which are more AI and blockchain linked. I won't get into that right now, but clearly having a digital CO2 emissions measurement system is critical. You need a ton of green product certifications. We're going to get into that in a little while, because there's a lot of certifications out there. Which one is the right one for you? On the mitigation part, there are various decarbonization projects, which includes futuristic technologies like carbon capture and hydrogen, which needs more R&D, more research to make it cheaper. Currently available technology, which is around, let's say, renewables, and then available technologies and all of that. And my favorite part is actually around the monetization. Who's going to pay for decarbonization, right? What is the value at stake over here? If there is nobody who's willing to pay for this, why will anybody take it up? So we're going to talk about that as well. Let's start with this, right? The slide is meant to be confusing. So if you're confused, don't feel bad. This slide is meant to be confusing because these are all the different standards which are needed for a steel company to do their CO2 emissions reporting today. And for the cement sector, it will If I take out a few of them from here, maybe one or two of them, the same is relevant for them as well. Let's go through this, right? From a CO2 emissions measuring standpoint, greenhouse gas protocol, which is considered the big daddy of CO2 emissions reporting, that's there. World Steel Association has its own reporting standard or its own methodology. Responsible Steel has its own. And if you're operating in the US, which is now a little watered down, there is something else. There are various certifications for it. There are 5 different ISO certifications to this. CIA has its Green Pro and Green Co. There are various regulatory requirements which have come in. I mean, there is EU CBAM, which we've talked about a little while ago. There is BRSR, which is India's ESG reporting framework. Ministry of Power has launched CCTS. Ministry of Steel has launched the Green Steel Taxonomy. For any manufacturer, are you going to get into being in the plant and manufacturing your steel or cement, or will you be left doing all of this? Right? This is what a lot of our clients actually ask us, that how much effort is actually going to go into all of this? Let's break this down a little bit, right? So apologies for the small text. I can come and talk to you later, or we have a booth at the back. You can hit us up there. Let's talk about a few parts of this, right? I'm going to get a little theoretical on this, but I think this is important for everybody to know. When you think about carbon footprinting, and I'm not going to get into ESG also for the time being, I'll just talk about carbon footprinting. Carbon footprinting is of 4 types. There is corporate carbon footprint, product carbon footprint, life cycle assessment, and EPDs, which are environmental product declaration. Corporate carbon footprint is the most simplistic form of all of this. It covers a company as a whole and all the sites within. It calculates your absolute CO2 emissions, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. It pretty much, most of the time, it goes from cradle to gate, which means from the origins of your raw materials up until your out gate, which includes your manufacturing, your upstream supply chain, and all of that. There are various frameworks to this. The greenhouse gas protocol has ISO 14064. If you do it by the WSA methodology, it's ISO 14404. GreenCo also, the CIA GreenCo also has a way to calculate this. There is the carbon credit trading scheme, which is from India's Ministry of Power BE. Ministry of Steel has the Green Steel Taxonomy, and there is responsible steel as well. Now, out of all of this, if you have been called upon, now let's talk about what is mandatory out of this. Mandatory out of this is CCTS. If you have been identified by the Ministry of Power as one of the companies, I think in steel, they've identified about 280 companies. In cement also a similar number. So if you've been identified by the Ministry of Power as one of the companies, you guys need to do this. All the others over here are optional. So if somebody is coming and telling you that you have to do responsible steel or something else, it's not mandatory, but it's optional. It is voluntary. You should do this only when you're able to get commercial benefit out of this. Right? We always have to see, it's good to do an inventory check once in a while, but from a certification standpoint and to spend that kind of money, you must be sure that this is going to get you commercial value. Let's go into product carbon footprint. Similar ISO methodology, ISO 14064. This basically, supposing you're producing billets, rounds, and whatever, one other product. It will calculate emissions on a per product level. So if you're talking to a customer about this, you can just say that if you're buying billet from me, the CO2 emissions are so much. If the rounds, CO2 emissions are so much. EU CBAM, the European CBAM, is a type of a product carbon footprint as well. This is also something which is mandatory today. If you're exporting to EU, if you fall under the 748 CN codes or HS codes, you need to be doing this, right? It's as simple as that. This has been in effect since 2023, or rather October 2023. Next year onwards, the financial penalties come in. I think there's been a lot of talk around what these taxes will be, so we'll skip that part for now. More and more companies are looking to even get something called an EPD. And LCA is a precursor to an EPD, so I'll directly jump to the EPD. EPD is a very good distinguisher, right? It basically goes into your CO2 emissions and many other parts of your environmental performance in a lot of detail. And once you go through this entire EPD evaluation, it will take you about 6 months to do. And there's a body called EPD International where your CO2 emissions profile will be really put up over there. Today, I think there are only about 4 to 5 companies in India steel companies who have an EPD. It's Tata Steel has it, JSW has it, ARS Steel, Mr. Bhatia over here, he has it, and a couple of others. In the cement sector, what we've seen is that Ultratech has it, ACC has it, but they have done it at an overall company level, right? They have not broken it down by site or by product, right? So this gives you an overview of all the different, and then obviously there is the ESG reporting, where in India BRSR is mandatory if you're falling under the top 1,000. There are other systems that you can also do. There's GRI, a lot of European ones like CDP and many others. But if you want to know more about this and what is applicable to you, we're right there at the back. You can come and talk to us about it. Uh, CBAM, everybody knows, I mean, all of us have heard of it. I think the key point over here, I'm not going to go through the details, but the key point over here is that CBAM is already there. I know there's our Ministry of Commerce and Industry is trying to fight this so that we have lesser taxes. But I mean, as of now, the taxes are going to start in 2026. If you are already an exporter, you must get your, okay. CCTS also, you guys already know. What I'm going to do is, and there's the green steel taxonomy, which gives 3 ratings: 3-star, 4-star, 5-star. This is something that if you are this is done by the Ministry of Steel. This is not mandatory right now, but highly promoted. I'm going to talk a little bit about this whole green steel premium topic, right? We recently did some work we've been working with a few real estate companies to help them figure out how they can get green steel. In a typical building, about 50% of the material that they use is concrete, about 20 to 30% is steel. What is the value of green buildings? Right now, I mean, most big builders, they're able to get the right certifications for green buildings, which are LEED, GRIHA, IGBC, and all of that. But now they're anchoring towards a different metric, which is kgs of CO2 per meter square. If you have an average building today without concern so much for green, this number will be at about 1,000. Companies like Lodha are trying to get this down to 300. The new IGBC program says that if you're able to get this down below 700, you will unlock new benefits. New benefits include greater customer value proposition. You'll probably, if you're a commercial building, you'd like to attract the Amazons and the Googles of the world to come and take up spaces. That is what attracts them. You get higher floor area ratio depending on which state of the country you're in. Certain banks have reduced interest rates for it, and there's faster environmental clearance. If builders are able to get some benefits out of this, why is this not being passed down to producers of green steel, green cement, and all of that? Now, this is just one example, and I'm not going to talk, Mr. Sharma talked in the beginning about war happening on 4 fronts. I don't want to open a 5th front by talking about if there is a premium or not. I will talk only by an example, right? So this is an example of ARS Steel, where we recently helped them sell their steel, their TMT bars, with a little bit of a premium to a Hong Kong-based company who's setting up a manufacturing site in India, right? They were previously buying from a steel player who had higher CO2 emissions. They transitioned over to ARS, and they were able to reduce their embodied emissions by 125 tons of CO2 per meter square, where other buildings are trying to get to 300 and all. They were able to reduce directly by 125, right? So this is just proof that there is a market right now for green products. We won't talk about a premium because first it's about acceptability, and that's what's going to happen in the next few years, and then we will talk about a premium. But there is a demand. Now, the price of that demand is yet to be ascertained, but there is a demand for green products, right? I'll skip some of these, but one more thing is that a lot of steel companies are coming up now with their own green steel brands, right? You see, Mr. Acharya a little earlier talked about JSW's Green Edge. Kalyani has its own brand. Tata Steel in Europe has 2 brands. A lot of Japanese companies have their own green steel brands. So this is something which is really coming up. The other part over here is, we don't have time to get into the details of this, but there is a whole calculation around avoided carbon tax, right? Depending on which country you're exporting to, there's a prevalent carbon tax over there. How can you actually come up with that? How can you gain value from there? Every steel player who's looking to export must actually take this into their calculations now. Avoided carbon tax, and it depends on which country you're operational in. And my last topic that I'm going to talk about is sorry, I'm just going to take 1 more minute, right? Because this is super important. Mr. Acharya in the morning, Mr. Prabodha Acharya, he talked about this green edge, where he talked about this certificate-based CO2 emissions management. This is what it is. This is the chain of custody released by the World Steel Association. If you are in the business of steel or even cement right now, this is very important to you. The way that this works is that you can have CO2 emissions projects, which you have CO2 reduction projects. Let's say you're doing solar. You get these certified as ISO 14064-2. You load up all of these credits into a carbon bank or a carbon wallet. And what you then do is you establish a CO2 emissions baseline, which excluded these projects. And then what you do is that whenever you have a customer order which requires low CO2 emissions than your average, you can attach these carbon credits just to those customer orders. So let's say only 20% of your customers today demand low CO2 emissions products. There is now a mechanism by which you can attach carbon credits to just those customer orders. And thereby you don't need to decarbonize your whole plant, but you're decarbonizing on a small. And to me, it's a stopgap solution till we figure out how to in a cost-effective way decarbonize our entire plant. But this is a way also to test waters. This has been certified by the World Steel Association. I'm sure in cement also something like this can be applied. And this undergoes the right third-party audits, etc., to make it happen. This is something that we have been working with a lot of companies, including JSW1. But this is something which is quite new in the area of CO2 emissions tracking. With that, I'm going to conclude. Thank you so much for your time and your attention.